Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Adam Draws Stuff. I'm Adam and I draw stuff, and today I am drawing this water droplet. It is quite possibly the wettest water I've ever seen. The reason that I wanted to do this tutorial today is because this is more applicable to not just water in general, or water drops in general, or specifically rather, but transparent materials as a whole. A lot of what I'll go through in showing you how to draw this water droplet is applicable to many transparent materials. So I think that you'll get a lot of use out of this tutorial, even if you're not really planning on drawing droplets of water. So for this tutorial, I am using a 2H pencil, HB pencil, a white pastel pencil, a blending stump, and a small little blender here. And I am doing this on pastel paper. It's kind of a bluish tone. So if you would like to learn how to draw this little water droplet right here, just keep on watching. Okay, so to first get this little water droplet started, we're gonna have to go in and outline the basic shape. So I'm gonna start at the top, and the way, I'm sure if you've ever seen water before in your life, you know that toward the top is the most narrow area, and then down here toward the bottom, because of gravity, all the water pools, so this part here is going to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to go down and just kind of mark out just a basic little droplet. Doesn't need to be anything too fancy or too special, but just the basic shape. And it's kind of showing up on camera, so that's a good thing. Okay. So that's basically the outline of our water droplet. This here, it kind of we'll just end it up the top there, and you'll see kind of how I'm going to end it. This part doesn't really matter too much. And then it kind of curves inward here a little bit, and then outward again, where most of the water, most of the mass of the drop is down here toward the bottom. So the thing about water is it basically follows the same rules as everything else that's transparent. So what that means is a few different things happen when light hits water. And one of those things, so first we're gonna just decide where the light source is gonna be, and I'm gonna have it coming from like the top left here, and then going down. So when that when that light hits from that angle, some of the light is gonna bounce back off of the surface of the water. So that is going to create a little highlight, and we'll say it's gonna be around here, just in that general area. So some of the light is immediately going to bounce right back off. Some of the light that doesn't bounce off is going to go straight through, and it's going to hit whatever is behind the water. So in this case, what's behind the water is just, well, the paper, or whatever you're drawing this little water droplet on, but we'll just pretend that it's the paper for this. So when the light comes through this way and it bounces off here, gives it and then we have the outline of our highlight, then it's going to keep traveling a little bit more, and then it's going to hit this flat surface, and it's going to leave another highlight behind the water drop on the surface of the paper, about right here. And this secondary highlight is what kind of gives it some volume and dimension, because your eyes are going to notice, like when you look at this water, that it's going to look like it has depth, because even though it kind of doesn't sound natural, your eyes naturally know how transparent things work. And when it sees this highlight on the outside, and then another softer highlight on the inside, it kind of creates a 3D effect a little bit, and it just looks natural. So the other thing that happens is with the remainder of the light, some of it is blocked by the actual water itself. Some of it's absorbed. So even though you think of water traditionally as transparent, it's not completely transparent. Nothing is truly transparent or it'd be invisible. So some of the light is actually going to be absorbed by the water, and the drop is going to cast a little bit of a shadow. So we're going to have a small shadow that's going to kind of wrap around this edge here. And we don't have to go in and outline that quite yet. And then a little bit of the light is going to be escaping from this highlight here. And then we'll have the smallest highlight, the most faint highlight, about right there. So, now that we basically have everything mapped out where it needs to go, the next thing is to do some shading. So I'm going to go in and clean up the edges a little bit here, and after I get the cat hair out of the way, that's not very helpful to anyone. So I'm going to go in and clean up the edges a little bit and give them a little bit of a more defined boundary. And the edges, you can actually make those pretty dark, because if you were to look at a real water droplet, you'd notice that the light sort of wraps around the surface and it almost like compresses itself along the edge, which leads to some harsh kind of dark edges. So you can go in and you can darken the outline quite a bit and it's still going to look pretty normal. I am not going to go in super dark where the highlight's going to be, but I'm still going to darken it just a little bit to give it a little bit of a more clear outline. Okay, so that is pretty good for that part anyway. Now, the next thing that we're going to have to do is to add in the majority of the shading. So if you remember, I said a lot of the light is actually going to be absorbed by the water itself, and it's going to kind of cast a little bit of a shadow. So everything that is not here where this highlight is, where our light hits the paper, everything that's not in this area is going to be shaded a little bit. The water itself is going to have its own color just a little bit, and then the water itself is also going to be absorbing some of the light and casting a shadow throughout this whole entire area here. So we're going to shade in some of this, focusing most of the attention right here along this side, the opposite side that the highlight here is hitting. So we're going to have it dark around this highlight and light around this highlight. And if that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, I know I'm not that great at explaining things, but once you see it, you'll get it. Okay, so that is a lot of the base shading done. It looks a little bit patchy. I'm also, one of the things that I guess I didn't mention is the paper that I'm using. So it looks a little bit blue. That is for good reason, because it is. The reason that I'm using some darker paper for this, and you don't have to, but the reason that I'm using darker paper is because when I go through, I'm going to actually add in some white tones here in the highlights, and I think it's just going to stand out a little bit better on camera. So, but if you don't have any tone paper, you can do this on white paper and it's going to look just as nice. So you don't have to worry about that. Anyway, it looks a little bit blotchy because this paper is very textured, so I'm going to go in now and try to clean this up a little bit and just redefine the boundaries of everything again, because in the process this paper that's really textured just smears in a way that's kind of hard to control. So I'm going to clean this up just a little bit along the edges, or at least I'm going to do my best. Alright, so that looks a little bit better. It's still not great, but looks a little bit better. The next thing that I'm going to go in and do is darken these shadows, the darkest part of the shadows, which is going to be around this area here where this surface highlight is. So I'm going to darken that up just a little bit, just to kind of pump up the contrast a little bit. Okay, so now that the basic shape and the basic tones of the water drop is done, we're going to go ahead and add the shadow and the highlight that it casts down here. So if you remember, our highlight or our light source is coming from the top left. That means we're going to have both a shadow and a highlight in the bottom right. Right across from where our highlight or where our light source is. So I'm just going to go in and I'm actually going to start kind of light here. Before I do that, I'm going to go back in and clean up that edge one more time to make a nice boundary between where the water ends and the highlight and shadow begins. Okay, so I'm going to go in with a 2H and I'm going to just kind of shade in this area here around the bottom right corner of the water droplet. And where we drew this little circle here, that area is going to be a highlight, so I'm not going to shade in there too much. Okay, and because of the way that the light works, it's, like I said, some of it is kind of bouncing around in the water a little bit, and then the light that does exit is going to be really soft and diffused. So the highlight and the shadow over here that's actually on the surface of the paper in this case, or the background that you're drawing your water droplet on, this needs to be really soft. So use any kind of blending stump or some tissue paper or your finger or anything, and make sure that you keep this shadow and this highlight here really soft and smooth, or at least as much as you can. Alright, and that just about does it. Now, if you're using white paper, you can basically stop here. You can build up some more shadows if you would like. If I were using just white paper, I would make this a little bit darker down here. But I am going to go in with a white pastel pencil, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of white to these highlights to make them stand out a little bit more. So I don't think I'm going to go any darker on the shadows, but I won't really be able to tell until after I've added the white. Like I said, if you don't have white pencil, or if you are doing it on plain white paper, you can totally skip this step and you'll be just fine, and you just might need to go a little bit darker on your shadows. Alright guys, well that's basically it. Pretty quick and simple, right? So it might not sound super practical to have a full tutorial on just how to draw a water drop, because I mean the average Joe's probably not going to be drawing water drops their whole life, day in and day out. But the rules to drawing a drop of water are really kind of applicable to just about anything that's transparent, because most transparent materials kind of interact with light in the same way. So even though you're probably not going to be drawn water drops like every day of the week, the concepts that you learn with this and that you take with you from drawing a drop of water, you can then use and apply to drawing glass or any other thing that's transparent. So it's not necessarily bound to water because the concept is basically the same for just about anything that's transparent. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this tutorial. It was a pretty quick and simple one today, but useful nonetheless. Definitely some good tips to take with you, regardless of what you're drawing. But sometimes drawing transparent objects can be difficult, and this should hopefully maybe demystify a little bit for you. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you did like this, go ahead and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and if you also feel so inclined, go ahead and hit the little bell down there so you can be notified when I upload new videos. You know how it works. Everybody and their brother and their mother and their aunt and uncle says this, so we all know what the bell means. But if you would like to subscribe and be notified, go ahead and do that. If not, thanks for watching anyway, and I hope to see you in the next one.